seems like we have a Caucasian male, maybe in his 40s or 50s, with long, darkish red hair, and seems to be more built and muscular than the average male.
Looks like he was stabbed with a knife that's laying next to his chest. Once it probably punctured his heart, causing his blood pressure to lower and run out of breath, causing death after a few short minutes.
Very good observation, Lauren. I believe you are correct, but we won't know for sure until the investigation is complete.
Okay, do we know who the victim is? Do you know if it was a suicide or murder?
Not at this moment, but when the coroner comes to pronounce him dead, and we can take his fingerprints and figure out who it is, and look for any other DNA and crime scene samples that will lead us to the suspect.
Okay, sounds good. Alright. First, we need to look for any prints.
That would be a good place to start. Latex prints are formed when the body's natural oils and sweat on the skin are deposited into another surface. Therefore, we should test for a print on the knife lying next to the victim's corpse. Be careful with the fingerprint powder because it can really contaminate the evidence. So after you dust for prints, use the UV light to examine the area.
Multiple sets of prints on the knife. Start lifting the prints with the clear adhesive tapes and then place it onto the latent lift card to preserve the print and put it into IAPIS, a database where 72 million print records are held. I'll start comparing the prints' characteristics and locations to determine a match. Alexis and I, this is a big case and we need all the help we can get.
No problem. What should me and Billy get started on?
You two can start helping us collect trace evidence.
Are we looking for any fibers and hair on the knife?
Yes, Billy, you start picking up hairs and clothing fibers off the knife using a pair of clean tweezers and then place it into an evidence bag.
Sure thing.
Just make sure you prevent contamination and loss of evidence. The chain of custody must be initiated upon collection and maintained until final disposition.
And make sure that the blood found on any clothing fibers is dry and then placed in the evidence bag to prevent molding process.
Then we can take it to the lab and do any further tests on it.
We must determine how long Brutus has been dead by the insects that are in and around his body.
As soon as the body is no longer living, early-stage insects are attracted to the decomposing body and may lay eggs. By studying this population of insects in the corpse, we can estimate the post-mortem index, any position change or cause of death.
Insects larvae on a dead body can provide evidence for the estimation of PMI up to 1 month.
So first, in order to estimate PMI, we have to determine the age of the larvae by measuring the length or dry weight of the oldest larvae and comparing it to the reference data.
You know, each stage of development has its temperature requirement. Hence, each species has its own defined number of accumulated degree day hours to complete its development.
A careful examination can reveal species variation as species associated with one type of habitat present on a corpse if found to be different from those when a corpse is transported after death.
There that is exactly the same as another. They may look exactly the same at first, but when examined closer, they are just tiny characteristics that may be different.
We will allow the blood to dry on the sore, then package it and send it to the lab to be fully tested for DNA.
Like the suspects have left footprints, so we must do everything to preserve it.
Well, as first we need to take photographs of the prints before it is collected, just in case you ruin the evidence.
Make sure that you photograph long-range shots and close-ups, that the quality of the close-ups is crucial to the examiner, that you capture as much detail as possible.
I'll go get the dental stone to cast the prints.
Collect all blood evidence with a sterilized cotton swab, and we must send it to the lab for further investigation. Here's some of the blood evidence that I found at the crime scene earlier.
Oh, thank you. When looking at bloody stains and splatters, examine the blood closely to determine the angle of blood it may have came from.
I do not see any splatter that indicate if the blood was cast off due to the one time being stabbed.
The only place the victim bled from was the chest and his mouth from the stabbing, but we need to determine whether or not the blood stains on the floor were from the victim or from the suspect, so we wab it up and send it to the lab.
Testing it with the presumptive test. It is indeed human blood.
The DNA from the object can isolate it.
Next, we quantify the DNA by making more copies.
Next, we amplify the DNA.
We profile the DNA using RFLP, PCR, STR, and mtDNA analysis.
All these steps will explain the results using probability.
Oh, sir. We're looking for an Octavius.
Who are
Is he
you?
home?
Sorry, sir, we've never introduced ourselves. We're the forensic science team for the FBI. We were wondering if you could come down to the station with us for some questioning of the death on Brutus.
Brutus is dead. I just saw him the other day. We made up and we were finally civil.
Well, sir, you can tell us
Octavius,
everything
the
at the
results are
station.
in. The only piece of DNA that we found was a strand of hair on his shirt.
When did you see Brutus last?
It was on Tuesday of this week.
Octavius, the results are in. The only piece of DNA that we found was a strand of hair on his shirt.
When did you see Brutus last?
It was on Tuesday of this week.
That was the day he died. We could tell by the PMI from the maggots on his dead body.
Are you implying that I killed him? Because I did. I know he was suicidal, but I would never harm a human being.
Then how do you explain the hair on his corpse?
We made up on Tuesday morning and we hugged. I probably shed a piece of hair on him. That's not enough evidence to convict me.
Okay, we believe you. You're free to go. The results show that Brutus did kill himself. We don't have any other evidence to prove that someone else did it.
I know, but what about the footprints of the multiple sets of fingerprints?
It says that the footprints came from Brutus. He tracked them through the front end of the house and realized they had mud on them, and took them off and washed them. That's why we didn't see any of this shoes with dirt.
And for the fingerprints, all the prints were Brutus's. They said that they believed he was playing with the knife in his hands, probably contemplating suicide, and therefore left many fingerprints. This definitely sounds like a suicide. Well then, case closed.
Follow me on Instagram at John Duke.